Did you know that Reddit is the third most visited website in the US? In February of 2024, they pulled in 4.47 billion visits, which was more than Amazon and Facebook, and only beaten out by Google and YouTube. Zooming out to the entire world, Reddit is still one of the top 10 most visited sites, coming in at number 8, just under Instagram, and last year, Instagram pulled in a solid $60 billion worth of revenue. With that in mind, how much revenue do you think Reddit pulled in? Maybe 30 billion or 40 billion? Well, Reddit didn't even pull in 1 billion. In fact, they only generated $810 million the entire year. This is especially concerning when you consider that they boast 850 million monthly active users. In other words, Reddit does not even make $1 per user per year. And that's despite the average Reddit session being longer than the average Instagram session. And Reddit isn't some sort of new social media startup like BeReal either, who hasn't had time to monetize. Reddit has been around for nearly 20 years now, and if you're still not convinced that Reddit has completely dropped the ball when it comes to monetization, just think about this. You know Craigslist, right? The online marketplace that looks like it's stuck in the 2000s? Well, that's because the Craigslist team does not care to optimize or monetize. They want the platform to be community-driven and are just looking to generate enough money to sustain themselves. And the funny thing is that even Craigslist has had years with higher revenue than Reddit, despite having less than a third of Reddit's user count. For nearly 2 decades, private investors have put up with these lackluster financial metrics simply because Reddit's user base was too large to ditch. But just last month, Reddit became a public company with a roaring IPO, and now the pressure is on to monetize Reddit. But what even happened? Why was Reddit not able to successfully monetize all these years? And do they have a chance of changing that story moving forward? If you're interested in having companies pay you, check out our bond investing app Silo in the description below. But anyway, to understand why Reddit has had such a hard time generating revenue, we have to take a look back at how they even grew their user base in the first place. The story of Reddit takes us back to a man named Steve Huffman. Steve was part of one of the first generations to grow up with computers. In fact, Steve had been learning to code since he was just 8 years old. Naturally, Steve went on to study computer science in college, and during his senior year spring break, Steve decided to attend a local lecture delivered by an entrepreneur named Paul Graham, and this completely changed the trajectory of Steve's life. If you aren't familiar with Paul Graham, he's one of the co-founders of Y Combinator, the startup incubator. Steve would get a chance to talk to Paul after the lecture, and Paul would invite Steve to apply to their brand new incubator. Steve's first idea wasn't to create Reddit though. His first idea was actually to create something eerily similar to modern food delivery. His idea was to create a way for people to order food through SMS messaging. Let's just say the world wasn't ready for this idea yet, so Steve would be forced to pivot, which is when he came up with the idea for Reddit. Reddit would be part of Y Combinator's first class, and with Y Combinator money, Steve would get the site up and running with the help of one of his college roommates, Alexis Ohanian. Reddit would officially go live on June 23, 2005, but the website didn't just immediately blow up. In fact, the site would struggle with underwhelming traffic. Embarrassed by how little traffic the website got, Steve would leverage the classic Silicon Valley strategy of fake it till you make it. Steve would go ahead and create hundreds of fake users and make a bunch of fake posts to make it seem like the website was actually active. And that brings us into the first reason that Reddit has had such a tough time making money. Silicon Valley mantras like fake it till you make it and growth over everything else have been engraved into Reddit's blood. In other words, Reddit simply never cared about making money, like, at all. As far as they were concerned, as long as they had enough funding to sustain the company, the only thing they cared about was growth. Now, technically, they did start selling ads pretty early on in 2006, but they didn't build out this infrastructure till 2018, 13 years after the company was founded. It was only then that they started building out ad servers, mobile ads, comprehensive bidding, interest-based targeting, retargeting, and serious conversion tracking. I mean, these are all basic attributes of any advertising platform, and Reddit didn't build this out till the late 2010s. No wonder their revenue was so lackluster. But anyway, using the fake accounts, they would make these posts about tech-savvy topics that they thought would attract the right users. This strategy was effective in attracting users to the platform, but were they actually the right users? Well, that's a lot more questionable. Over the years, we've talked about other social media platforms having suboptimal demographics, but Reddit's demographics are suboptimal in a completely different way. With most platforms, the main issue with the user base is that they're too young or don't make much money, which makes it hard to monetize. But with Reddit, it's a completely different issue. Their users hate the consumer economy. For example, what do you think when you see a picture like this? Do you think, "Oh wow, I wonder how he was able to afford that car. I wish I had one as well"? Or do you think, "Oh, what an ostentatious display of wealth and gluttony that achieves no purpose"? If you thought the former, then you're probably an Instagram user. If you thought the latter, then you're probably a Reddit user. In fact, I would argue that this is one of the main factors that made Reddit popular in the first place. A lot of people felt that mainstream platforms like YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and more recently TikTok are overly consumption-oriented. Every post you see on Instagram is to some degree a show of wealth and status. Whether it's a post showing off designer clothing or supercars or a luxury home or a first-class vacation or a destination wedding, you get the idea. It's the same thing with YouTube. If you're a kid nowadays, you're not watching SpongeBob, you're watching Mr. Beast give away $1 million every week. Obviously, a lot of people are fans of this sort of content. That's why Instagram and YouTube have billions of users. But a lot of people aren't fans either, and those are exactly the people who gathered on Reddit, a sort of anarchist sort of community. This isn't to say that all Reddit users think this way, but much of Reddit's core user base does. This of course means that the prevalence of ad blockers amongst Reddit users is extremely high. But even if these guys were shown ads, they're not the type of person to be swayed to buy something on a whim anyway, making it extremely difficult to monetize. If this aversion to advertising and consumption wasn't bad enough, Reddit also has to fight against other monetization challenges as well. For example, much of Reddit is NSFW, or not safe for work content. In fact, Reddit was the platform that really popularized this acronym in the first place. Now, I'm not sure how accurate this statistic is, but according to a Reddit post, 22% of subreddits with over 100,000 users are NSFW. AKA, advertisers don't want to get anywhere near 22% of Reddit, and the other 78% isn't much better due to Reddit's format. With YouTube, you can easily show video ads, arguably the most effective type of ad. With Instagram and TikTok, you can do sponsored posts. And with podcasts, you can directly speak to engaged listeners. But what the hell do you do with Reddit? You're more or less just limited to display ads like this, which are notoriously ineffective for advertisers. So essentially, you have a massive community that isn't big consumers to begin with. And on top of that, 22% of the platform isn't even advertiser friendly. And the other 78%, well, you can't effectively advertise to these people anyway, as you're stuck with bottom of the barrel display ads, which brings us to where we are today. As you can see, Reddit has always struggled with monetization, partially because of the mindset of founders and executives who prioritize growth over everything, and partially because of the mindset of users who don't care to consume. Despite these challenges, Reddit has doubled down on monetization since the late 2010s, largely because you can't just indefinitely run a money pit. Eventually, investors do want to see returns, and the good news for Reddit is that this monetization push has been quite successful. They were able to scale revenue from just 80 million in 2018 to 810 million in 2023, so over a 10x in just 5 years. But a good amount of that growth was thanks to Reddit's user base growing. Since 2018, Reddit's user base has tripled, but not much has happened since the beginning of 2022. It seems that Reddit is starting to reach market saturation, and as such, revenue growth between 2022 and 2023 was also much lower than in previous years. This isn't to say that Reddit can't continue growing their revenue by shoving in more ads and becoming stricter with ad block like YouTube did. But I have a tough time seeing Reddit being able to scale this model past $10 billion in annual revenue, and that's being generous. Not a bad amount by any means, but still a lot less than their peers. But maybe there's another way. Just because the advertising model doesn't mesh well with Reddit doesn't mean that there's no way to monetize their massive user base, which brings us into their new partnership with Google. In late February, Google announced that they would be partnering with Reddit, not to run ads, but to train AI models. And if you think about it, that actually makes a lot of sense. What's Reddit's biggest asset? Well, since it's anonymous and its users don't care that much about social status or image anyway, people post and comment about whatever they want quite freely. You won't find that on a platform like Instagram, where the comments are even faker than the posts themselves. This makes Reddit one of the few treasure troves on the internet where we see pure, unfiltered thoughts, oftentimes too unfiltered. That's what attracts many users to the platform in the first place, and it just so happens that that's extremely valuable for training AI. I mean, where else can you get this sort of depth and breadth in terms of topics and discussions, not to mention on a public forum? Google has spotted this opportunity, and that's why they've agreed to pay $60 million to get access to Reddit's data APIs. Ironically, that's almost 10% of Reddit's entire 2023 revenue, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not all that much money. But who's to say that it'll stop there? In 2021, Google paid Apple $26 billion to be the default search engine on their devices, but I'm sure that it was nowhere near that amount when they initially struck the deal. If Reddit's data is truly helpful for Google in taking on the likes of ChatGPT, it's possible that this deal will grow into something much larger. In fact, maybe other AI companies will also start approaching Reddit, at which point Google might have to pay even more to have exclusive rights to the data. That's just one theory though. The bottom line is that advertising doesn't work all that well on Reddit, and that's why the company is barely generating any revenue despite being one of the most popular websites on the planet. But just because the advertising model doesn't work doesn't mean that there isn't another way to monetize. Only time will tell if one of these other avenues is successful though, and in the meantime, Reddit will remain the worst monetization failure in social media history. If you're interested in deeper dives, interviews with insiders, and exclusive tech analysis, consider subscribing to our free weekly newsletter. But until then, I'm Hari, and I'll see you guys on the next one.